I'm the animation director at Ubisoft Milan.
Hello, I'm Tommaso Sanguigni, animation technical director at Ubisoft Milan. And we are here today to talk a bit about the typical workflow of an animator working on our game, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle.
So we're currently busy working with this guy right here. In fact, we're working on the next Mario plus Rabbids DLC story content, which will include Donkey Kong.
Yeah, unfortunately, we cannot show anything yet, but we hope you'll be surprised.
So here's a quick summary of what we'll discuss today. We'll start from the very early phases of the production, going through the process to the final implementation. So we'll start from the conception to see what kind of information we can get from the amazing work done by Mauro Perini, who is our art director, and his team of artists. Then we'll see how the characters are brought from these drawings to the 3D world to be ready to be animated. We'll move to the pre-production phase and talk a bit about brainstorming, planning, and the use of references. And then, of course, we'll see a workflow demo of the production of an asset. And finally, the implementation in the engine and the final review. So let's start from conception. This is the very first phase where, as animators, we start gathering precious information about the characters. And here's an example with the first boss of our game, Rabbids Kong. And there's a lot of useful information here. From these drawings, we can get inspiration regarding posing. For example, just a look at him swinging on throwing a barrel. But even more importantly, regarding the acting, his psychology and thought process. And if you see this drawing on the left, for example, it's interesting to see how Rabbids Kong cannot decide between Rabbid Peach and the banana, and this is super useful to define his character.
Yeah, and also the asset department here can gather some very precious information, like the kind of the deformation required during the animation, or foresee any possible technical challenges, for instance, the fur of the Kong.
And here's another example with Spony, one of the main characters of our game. He's a very shy guy that tends to overreact when he's scared, creating the enemies that populate our world. And you can get the feeling of his attitude by the way he's just sitting on the top left drawing, or overall his reaction to a simple drop falling. And more examples here: line reactions, facial expressions and deformations, acting choices, the way he interacts with the environment. All these elements help the iteration process between the design team, the art team, the animation team, and also the design, the narrative design team, because during this phase we are usually still iterating on the story content.
Yeah, and here you can see an example of another of our bosses, the Phantom. Let's say that the concept has been approved. Now it's time to produce a model sheet. The model sheet is necessary to establish the character size and proportions, details that must be defined very early in the production phase. This is crucial, in particular in our game, where the camera is quite far away, and we want to make sure that the characters are readable under a gameplay point of view, in a way that the player can define a good gaming strategy. The next phase is the production of the 3D model. Here is very important to define a very clean topology, in a way that we could get predictable deformations during the animations. And here is a turnaround. And the next phase, of course, is creating the rig. This character was quite challenging for us due to his proportions. And see how his body is very bulky, and he has these very short arms. And also we share the models between gameplay and cinematics. So we want to make sure that to find the right balance in terms of poly count and joints for both the gameplay and the cinematics. Let's see a quick breakdown of the rig functionalities. Of course, the rig is scalable. Our engine supports scaling. We have IK and FK switching on the spine, on the limbs. Everything is activatable by the controls panel of the character that you can see on the left. And here you can see the character stretched quite a bit.
Yeah, we try to give the animators full control on the deformations of the character, so they can really push the shapes and the volumes to the extreme.
Yeah, this character is actually very fun. And here you can see a little breakdown of the functionalities for the facial rig. We have a controls GUI and additionally direct controls in a way that the animators are not limited on the way they can deform the characters. Another little functionality is the ability to isolate the visibility of the various parts of the rig.
Yeah, this is super useful during the polishing phase because you can just hide arms and ears, for example, and focus on the main body masses like torso and chest, for example, and just focus on make those work before focusing on the details.
And let's see other functionalities. We support the space matching. Here you can see the space matching in action on the IK of the arm. And we have space matching also for the various props the character might use. And we have rotation isolation for the supporting parts, in this case the head of the Phantom and the arms. And the ears play an important role in acting for our Rabbids. We have an environment populated of Rabbids, so we pushed a little bit more the functionalities for the ears, like IKFK switching.
Yeah, and the rigs are custom made, so if we need something specific, we can always ask for some new cool features.
Yeah. For us, the artists are our clients, so we want to make sure that the artists are happy and not frustrated.
Yeah, we love to bug the technical department.
Yeah, exactly. But we are friends. And let's see something a little bit more juicy. Here you can see the animation of the IK controls on the arm. Anytime the animator can select a frame range and convert the animation from IK to FK.
Yeah, we were coming from motion builders, so we want to have the possibility to switch from IK and FK at any time. It's useful, for example, during the polishing phase. Maybe you can pose your character using IK and switch to FK at a later time. So you can choose to match along a range of frames only where the keys are, or just match and bake and just switch.
And here you can see the integrated dynamics we can preview in Maya. It can be activated by the controls panel. The animator can tweak the parameters or use specific presets, and then bake out the simulation. We used both keyframed simulation and in-game real-time simulation according to the specific needs we have in-game. And here is a glimpse of the ecosystem in terms of characters that we have in game. Just notice the difference in terms of proportion, size, functionalities that they have.
Yeah, and from an animator point of view, this is just awesome. You have these characters so different in terms of character size, and you really can express yourself. It's just great. All right, so when the first pass of the rigging process is ready, animators can start to test it. And this is crucial, as animators are given some time to experiment with the rig, to learn the details and the psychology of the character. So the amount of time depends on the specific complexity, and for some of them, animators have even a few weeks to unleash their creativity and find ideas. And in this phase, they can literally play with the character, and the purpose is not to produce assets that are going to be included in the game at all costs, but to test crazy ideas, pushing the boundaries, and proposing something new. So let's see some examples. This is one of the first animation tests we did during the prototyping phase of the Phantom. And as you can see, polishing is not an important part of this stage. Some details like the prop is not even animated yet. The focus here is on posing, gestures, deformations.
Yeah, just for example, pay attention to the jiggling of the belly. And it was really a test also for the technical department to make sure that we can reach the kind of deformations required by the animators.
And here's another singing test. And here we try to play with different poses with the arm. And we also implement a new facial setup here, on this guy for the first time. So we wanted to test how it looks.
Yeah, that's true. At this stage, we moved from a strictly joint-based facial setup to a hybrid of joint-based and vertex shader-based deformation.
And here's another example. This is a phase with many different interactions with the technical department, because sometimes crazy ideas can bring changes to the design of the character itself. For example, this is a very first blocking of an animator proposing this idea with Rabbid Mario playing with a mandolin, and the same happened with the toothpick. It was not planned at the beginning; it just been added later on because of these animations.
Yeah, and once this proof of concept becomes approved, this temporary asset is then sent to the asset department to create the final version of the prop and then rigged.
Another rough test. Rabbid Mario eating a slice of pizza.
Yeah. I mean, we can't avoid pizza. You know?
We just had to. We're Italians. We just love pizza.
It's just Italian cliche.
Yeah. And in parallel, there's a reference phase. We have general references that help to define the animation style of the project as a whole, while other ones influence a specific feature or active moment. And let's have a look at the specific sequence as an example.
You think yours is a real mustache?
And when we started to work on the personality of the Phantom, we already knew that we wanted to define an over-the-top dramatic character. So looking for reference, the one that really helped and the impact on the final version of this character is this clip of Bugs Bunny. What we found interesting here was the posing and how clearly it conveys the attitude and the caricature and in his personality. Of course, the characters are much different in terms of size and volumes, but they're kind of trying to do the same thing, parodying an orchestra director in one case and an opera singer in the other one.
Yeah, and this character is part of our childhood, so for sure our animators had a lot of fun playing with it.
I mean, just look at this contrast right here. It's pure entertainment.
Amazing.
Yeah. And here you can see the kind of impact it had on our character. Okay, different, of course, personality, but we wanted to capture that feeling, that theatricality. Another example of the use of references from live-action clips. And here's a video starring Augustin Chemel, the singer that lends his voice to the Phantom. What we looked for in these clips are acting and gestures that will help us define the personality. So what we notice in this clip is the movement of his left shoulder.
Ha! You think yours is a real mustache?
So the way he pushes his shoulder forward, leading the action of the head, it creates tension in the pose. It's just interesting as a movement. So we tried to implement that in the animation. So let's see it one more time.
Ha! You think yours is a real mustache?
And this is the final sequence. Obviously, the movement is greatly exaggerated.
Yeah, we stole the the poses and also the mustache, because the mustache weren't part of the character since the beginning.
And another example is the use of video reference. So the animator can shoot themselves to get information. So this is one of our colleagues recording himself for a shot of the cinematic. As you see, the sequence is much different, but there's some useful information in here. So here's a slow motion of it. So, for example, this frame, okay, so you can notice the stretch effect on the hand and arm because of motion blur. Of course,
yeah, our animators feature squash and stretch.
We rig that this way. But the thing is, our engine does not support motion blur, so we have to achieve this kind of feeling using deformations and smear frames. Or interesting information are regarding details like line of actions going through the arm or the body, or straight lines to create force and contrast. Or body mechanics. So, for example, the way the hand is pivoting on the fingers, how the elbow is moving to catch the way, to rise the right arm. It's all useful information. Or the way the hands and the feet are settling, or the slightly slide on the whole body because of inertia. That's all useful information that we might use or not, depending on the shot itself. So this is the sequence. As you can see, the reference was shot for the first iteration in the top right corner, but the sequence changed a lot later during the process. Another use of reference is to design new features and interact with the design department. A real case scenario is our team jump. The team jump is one of the most iconic features of our game, and the characters that can extend their movement with the support of a teammate. And the reference in this specific case comes from Japanese animation. We are a huge fan of it, and in the specific case from an anime called Captain Tsubasa. So this is the sequence specifically, and as you can see, this is our team jump, and another Italian cliche.
Yes, soccer.
Italians and soccer. All right, we are horrible, but it helped define what we wanted clearly before setting any key in Maya. So once the animator has experimented with the rig, has a clear idea of what he's going to do, gather some reference, it's time to start the production itself. So usually we have 2 animators working on a character at any given time. The production can last from 1 month to up to 4 in the most complex cases. It depends on many factors. So let's see an example of the workflow. Let's say we are to work on another pose for Rabbit Mario.
Yeah, we have this little script that basically makes the startup of the scene for the animator's work, like starting up the tools, setting the proper frame rate, and setting up the controls panel for the character that you can see here, and it's dockable.
Yeah, with all its panels here. So the most important thing in this phase is focusing on posing, since the adults are crucial, and many animations will depend on these, so like transitions, attacks, and so on. And the challenge here is that they have to be readable from the gameplay camera, like Tommaso said before, and they can be seen on a super freaking giant home screen or in undocked mode, and where the screen is smaller. So the focus here is on clarity. It's truly, truly important, because you can have the most beautiful pose ever made, but if it doesn't support the gameplay or it doesn't read from the camera, then it's kind of pointless. So it's challenging because the Rabbids have their volumes are tricky. They have very short legs and arms, huge heads. It's not always easy to get appealing poses from the camera angle.
And we also have this other little tool here That basically previews the camera the animator will find in engine. It uses presets, but really helps him to avoid to go straight to the engine during the posing phase.
We have tools to store multiple animations within the same Maya file, but usually during this phase we're just using a single timeline and putting different poses in different keyframes and try to iterate on how the character will interact with the environment, the covers, or how he will can communicate his attitude and his personality. So this is a very important phase where we can iterate fast with the design team, trying to understand if we're on the right way before spending too much time on it. So again, we're not focusing yet on details, just to get the general idea. If we're happy with a specific pose, we can quickly add some motion on an additive layer to get some idle movement in there, and try to have approval.
Here you can see our exporter tool in action, and it basically takes care of exporting the specific required clips, and a 4-view playblast is automatically generated.
Yeah, this is super useful because of internal and external reviews. So to get approvals from Nintendo, this is a very important phase, because without wasting too much time on it, we can just have a clear playblast that everyone can have feedback on. So here's one of our animation systems. So if the pose is approved, we can move to the engine. This is Snowdrop. Each animator is in charge of implementing his or her animations. It can be a new feature, which involves building a new part of the graph, working with designers and programmers. Or just plugging the animation clip in the right spot if the graph already exists. And to keep things organized, we have subgraphs, obviously. And here's the locomotion part. And this part in particular is the logic for the team jump. And this is the cover system. Of course, each node can have its own inner logic. And here you can see a simple example of it. It can be much more complex. It depends on the feature and if it can save time and assets.
Yeah, the cool thing here is that the animator has a quick feedback on his node network, since the engine gives you real-time feedback on what's happening. So it's very straightforward also for the artist.
Yeah, this is very powerful because we can build our own logic without depending from the programmers once the
that's true.
There, so we can iterate it till the very last moment, and
it's very flexible.
So once it's implemented in the system, it's tested in our dojos, our gyms, and we have several of them to test different features like combat system, moving abilities like Mario here performing a dash on the enemy. We have this one for the heights to test the aiming system, or special techniques.
Or sometimes just for fun, as you can see here.
This was just for fun. Or to test specific battle goals or specific battles with specific enemies. So let's say that the character is in cover. You can check your pose from different angles. Be sure that it reads clearly. We can mean to understand the details because we also have camera directors, so the camera might zoom in. We have to be sure that will work. And if we are happy with it and the pose is approved, we can switch to a polishing phase. Now, what we're focusing on during this phase, we check spacing, timing, of course, arcs, inertia of the masses, to be sure that everything does not move at the same exact speed and time, to get the characters feel as organic as possible. And this is a very important phase. We check, of course, compenetrations, interactions with props.
Props, yeah.
It's a phase where I might do also draw overs if needed. But the final approval, of course, it has to be in the engine. It's where it matters. And if everyone is happy with it, hopefully we get the final approval from all the people involved. And that's pretty much it. So thank you very much. We hope the talk was interesting. We'd like to thank all the people involved in the production of this game.
Yeah, thank you. You guys rock.
And especially the animation team.
Yes.
You are awesome guys. And also thank Mike and Twitch for giving us the opportunity to be here to be
Yeah, thank you.
with all these amazing, talented people. So it's just an honor to be here for us. And here are our contacts. Feel free to contact, to reach out if you have any question or just want to connect. We'll be more than happy to answer.
Yes, to reply. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome, guys! That was so amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
I
Thank
loved
you.
it. I've told you this earlier. Like that game just blew my mind. Like the amount of personality that you guys got in there, all that stuff was so good.
Yeah, the team will be happy.
yeah,
We tried
Obvious.
to have fun with it.
yeah. It was great. So, what we're doing now is when we have talks like this, where they're going through a presentation, they don't have the ability to answer your questions during the presentation. We're collecting all those questions. We've got them here. I'll be asking them to these guys
Sure.
as more questions come in. Go ahead, keep asking questions. Right, like that's the whole point of this. Is to,
Yeah,
this is your
Yeah.
guys' chance to have access to them.
absolutely.
So keep bringing those in. I have a few of my own as well, but we're going to just get started with some of these. So the first question is from Jordan Animating. Honestly, I just want to thank these guys for making such a colorful animated
you.
game.
Too kind.
They want to know, were there any specific angles that worked on the animation in readability, right? If there were, or if the angles were kind of optimized, the poses were optimized for specific angles in general.
Yeah, usually our battles have a specific setup of cameras, so we try to focus on those angles first. We have like 4 angles.
Yeah, that's what you saw earlier in our tool that previews the camera. Basically, we have the predefined camera there. The animator can just click on the specific angle and get the right angle.
We have 2 specific presets for the exploration phase and the combat phase,
Yes.
so they can check the stuff before getting into the engine right away. And then, of course, we still check the poses from every angle because of camera director. So we have some moments where the poses can be seen also from the other some other camera angles. So we need to be sure that they work in any case, but we focus on those one first. The pose has to be read clearly, the silhouette has to be clear. So it's super important. We spend a lot of time on this phase.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the biggest challenge is to let having the poses working correctly from a few inches screen to a huge screen. So that's the biggest challenge.
So many
Yeah.
times we have a very cool pose from one angle or even 3, and then you switch to the other one and you just can't understand what the character is doing. And they go, all right, come on, let's try to fix it. Move this arm right here. Maybe push the elbow. No, it's
Iterative.
Yeah.
Did you guys find because it was on the Switch, right? And people could
Yeah.
either be playing a screen like this
Yeah.
or like this. How did you strike that balance, right? Because I know when something's sort of smaller, you need to make it a lot broader, and then once it's bigger, if it's too broad, it's sort of
It's kind of a back and forth process. We try to have it readable on the small screen because if it doesn't read, it's a problem. If we watch it on the big screen and it's too much, it's easier to scale it down. You know.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, next question is this is from Niels Dinkelar. I wonder how much of the follow-through on the characters is hand animated and how much is simulated.
It's heavily handcrafted.
Okay.
Sometimes we have we start maybe with a base where it's simulated, but we always have to put our hands on it because of arcs and spacing. I mean, it's most of the time it's just animated.
Yeah, this is especially true during the cinematics where you want to make sure that the simulation is going straight how you think about it.
Also because for the rabbits, often the ears are part of the acting. So
Yes, that's true.
it's important that they hit the right moments and the right accents. So usually, yeah, the animators like to work on them and have full control of them.
Yeah. That's why we spend time on controls, on functionalities, on the ears.
Yeah.
It may sound a little bit overshooting in terms of functionalities, but in reality, they just wanted to have more control. It's something that we got after iteration, and we learned how to just handle with the ears.
But it's still great to have those tools for the first few phases, where you can just put some motion in there, so it does not confuse the other departments. That it's not always easy interacting during the blocking or step process. So maybe you just put some ears moving there, and it seems in a more advanced state than it really is. It's
That's
easier
awesome
to communicate.
Actually, this leads perfectly to our next question from Cephiosodatis. When you have all of these efficiency measures that let the animators do so much of their own thing with this stuff, how did you guys find you were able to maintain strong communication as to what they were capable of doing, if they needed something more, when they should be going too far with it? What's that?
We have a strong feedback philosophy. So we stress a lot about feedbacks and gathering feedbacks from all the people involved on all the team. So we try to have review sessions together. So where it's a great moment where everyone can add their own ideas and try to push the idea of someone else. So it's a team effort. Animation. It's not the work of a single entity. It's it's a collaboration of the all people involved. So we actually. We try to look for feedback in any way we can. It's super important.
Yeah, and we get feedback from basically anyone in the team, not just the animators.
Yes.
And we just take it as a real feedback.
Which is super important as well, because sometimes as animators we focus on the little details and you get lost in it. Wow, this movement is super cool, and then someone else which is
maybe on gameplay it doesn't work that well.
Look at animation and says, I'm not sure what's happening, and then all right, it's not working.
Something is not working.
So it's no, it's just a no.
That's good. I had a question of my own, which was, what sort of obviously you guys know Rabbids, right?
Yeah.
When you got Nintendo characters, what sort of how did they kind of give you information about the character, like their history, their posing, sort of stuff like that? What did that stuff look like?
So we knew the Rabbids, but actually we wanted to take them in new directions. So that was a change as well, because now they have a specific personality. So we were used to work with the generic white rabbit who has a generic personality, and it was a challenge to give to each one of them their unique thought process. So that part was challenging as well. For Nintendo characters, we went through tons of references we studied.
And playing. Playing a lot.
And also in our team we have super Nintendo fans. They are really, their feedback is amazing. They can tell you by heart if the movement is right or not. It's fine for the character. So of course we have feedbacks from Nintendo, of course. But the first time we did when working on the prototype was to look as much and learn as much as we could looking for everything we could find.
That's awesome. We have a question here from at Bloodwad. That's a wonderful name. How long does it take and how many passes do you usually have to do before an animation is approved for something like those special long jump animations?
it really depends. Sometimes everything goes fine. Everyone is like it, and
It goes smooth.
1-2 days in, it's fine, and you're like, wow, that was easy. And sometimes it's difficult because what really matters is the character, its personality, and what the player will feel. So if it's not there, we keep iterating until we feel it's right and proper for the character. So there's not a general rule. It depends. We keep iterating until we are there.
Awesome. Another question I had just for myself. Sorry, chat. I have a bunch of my own. So you would have moments, right, in the levels where you would see, I guess, the generic Rabbids, right, the white Rabbids that were just hanging out in the environment doing weird, ridiculous stuff. That just seemed, like, what was your process for that? Was that actually something that spec'd in, or was just animators being like, I want to animate weird stuff? Like, how'd that come about?
We wanted to put some life in the world. We wanted to make it feel alive. So we have the Rabbids doing their own crazy things in the world because they are there, so they must be doing something. In the meanwhile, when we are exploring the world, but we also worked on the musical props. For example, we have props that are moving according to the music, in sync with the music. So we just wanted to make the world feel alive. So that was our purpose.
Awesome. Yeah, they had some of the loops that you had multi-characters doing for so long. It was so. I was like, man, that must have taken so long, but it was so good. I loved it. Every time you would see one, I would just sit there and stare at it forever.
Yeah, we tried different solutions there. Some of them have very long loops to have acting moments. Some other ones have shorter loops with random clips played, like actions. It depends on the characters, but we try to have some variations there.
Yeah.
I mean, just added to the characters. Actually, I wanted even more. If we had more time, I'd spend ages on those.
It's also because the animators really enjoyed animating these funny guys. So
it's great to work on those nuggets that you're not sure if anyone will ever notice, but you know they're there, and when someone spot them, you're like, yes.
So good. You were great.
Yes.
All right, so we'll get back to some Twitch questions. We have another one from Niels Dinkelar. Do you also use smear frames for game animation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So yeah. Of course, the amount has to be tuned because of the camera and how far it is. But yeah, it's part of the style. It's super important. Cool. Yeah, the amount is different compared. I mean, on the Rabbids we have full body deformations. It's much more extreme. On the Nintendo characters we have to keep it simple and only on the limbs like feet and so on. So the amount is less. But also in gameplay, absolutely.
Awesome. Niels also wondered, how important is it for animators to be able to make things like the node graph setups that you guys had and that implementation stuff?
Let's say to me, it's important for the polishing and debugging phase. So I don't expect that everyone is super technical and know everything. We can't all be technical animators, so I don't expect that. But it's important that they at least know their way around it. So if there's some issues, they can spot it and fix it on their own without depending on other people. So it depends on the animators. Some of them are more technical, some of them are less. So we give each other a hand where needed. So.
Yeah. How do you guys? I know every studio is a little different, but with your riggers and technical animators, how much of that overlap of what they're doing sort of in Maya and that stuff versus the in-game stuff? Is there a divide there, or does it get kind of blurry?
It's blurry. It's blurry, really. Yeah. We just talk. We think about all the possible solutions, which cost less, which gives more freedom in terms of expressiveness, and then we come up with a solution.
Yeah, when a feature comes up and we need to iterate on that, we try to understand the best way to approach it. And sometimes it's worth it to spend some time to find some cool technical solutions that can be shared and reused. Sometimes it's just easier to just do it.
Yeah, exactly. The brute force approach.
Yeah, definitely. At Chris Go 90 was wondering how much time do you think is spent testing all of that stuff in game?
Uh,
I guess maybe compared to animating, like how much time do you think they're animating versus how much time they're sort of testing and implementing?
it's I don't know. It's part of the process, because the game is where it really matters.
Yeah. You ship the game. You don't ship
The
Maya.
Maya
So-
file.
Yeah.
So it's very hard to say. It's very hard to
Yeah.
say.
We can say that maybe in the beginning it's more Mayan engine. In the end, it's more on Maya probably, and less in the engine because you have already all your animation system set up correctly.
Yeah.
You know what's the feature in terms of
Yeah,
gameplay.
it depends on the status of the production.
Yeah.
The early
Yeah.
phases you have to set up everything, so probably it's less important to have the polished stuff in Maya.
Yeah.
And the more you go towards the end, the more time you try to get to polish
little bit
everything.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, what's really fun is that we had a lot of cases where we just thought about a feature that was okay. Maybe this one is gonna take a few days. It's gonna be very straightforward, and you get a lot of problems. And some other apparently very complex feature, they end up being done at
simple.
just straight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
At first step.
it's just the game development process.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
never
it's
know what
just
to
crazy.
expect, but
Yeah.
it's the good part of it.
Yeah. We have a question here from @X Narcissus Prime X.
Awesome name.
What was the thought process behind the hilarious yet incredibly strong fighter Rabbid Peach? Like
Rabbid
I know that
instantly
guy.
hard.
I know that guy.
Rabbid Peach is our hero.
Yeah.
She's just awesome. We wanted to have a kind of sassy hero. I mean, a strong personality, and we didn't want to have work on cliches. We wanted to have something different. So we worked on their personality to have a very strong, confident personality, and it just came to life. And now it has a life on its own. It's her that tells us what she needs, and how she needs to perform. It's just that's awesome. One of my favorite characters.
Yeah, the moment where she was like taking selfies as you took down I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is hilarious.
Yeah, that was part of brainstorming. We were working on that sequence, and one of our guys, one of our animators, came up with that idea, and it was like, yeah, why not? And at that point, she did not have a cell phone yet.
Oh wow.
That was
Yeah.
It was added because of that moment. It was wait, we could do this, and okay, let's do it.
And then it became such
Yeah,
a
exactly.
big
Yeah,
part.
let's do it.
We try to don't put boundaries on creativity.
Yeah.
That's the biggest point.
That's a crucial part of our process. Like
Yeah.
we can have any change at any time,
Yeah.
and we really push for the creativity of everyone involved.
Yeah. And
Awesome.
this animator in particular put a lot of effort and passion on this character,
Yes.
and it really paid off.
Yeah. Okay, the Broken Tangent asks, was any procedural animation used so animators could focus on the more sort of important showpiece animations? I mean, like you guys talked a little bit about simulation. Obviously, that's a form of procedural.
Yeah, but apart from that, on the main body, it's all keyframe, all handmade. Yeah, so nothing jumps to my mind right now. We
Yeah,
have some
just a
simulations.
little appendix here and there. Mostly on the enemies are procedural or simulated, but for the rest, it's the main acting.
Yeah,
It's-
we have some stuff with on the props like ice breaking,
yeah.
something like that. On the characters, it's all keyframe.
Yeah.
Awesome. @Resistance Fox asks, does an animator at your studio work on both cinematics and gameplay, or do you have separate teams for that?
We have separate teams for that.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a cinematic team and a gameplay team. But at some moment they can have a chance to switch, it happened that some people from gameplay worked on cinematics and vice versa, especially during the prototyping phase. Maybe we all work on prototyping features together, since guys are still working on the story, and then each department works on their own stuff.
Yeah, fantastic.
And there's also mutual influences between the two departments.
Yeah. When learning the characters and defining their personality, there's a lot of interactions to try to understand, because maybe someone on gameplay has a new idea, new posing, and it will have an impact on what the cinematic is doing, or vice versa. Maybe an acting moment in the cinematic will define the character. So, all right, this works better. Let's go back to gameplay and try to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened with, for example, with Rabbids Mario or Rabbids Yoshi. His craziness was pumped up late in the production because of cinematics.
Yeah. Yeah, and you get like those weird overlaps too, right? Where it feels sort of cinematic when you're doing like the hop from this character over to this enemy, and you know you're doing that focus camera stuff, and it starts to kind of blend the. You need to make sure that the visual language and style matches consistently between them, which is
and there's also the great work of the programmers, of course.
cool. All right, guys. Well, I believe the next talk is ready, and I think Twitch chat has had some amazing questions, but. I think you guys are off the hook now.
Okay.
Thank you both. That was great.
Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
It's a honor.
I loved it. It was great. So next is, this is nuts. Okay, so it's the Anim Extreme Hot Seat Showdown 3000. Wow. I think I messed that name up. This is the crazy one. We've got Jake Campbell, who's at worked on Cuphead, Lana Bashinsky, who's at Blizzard, Heroes of the Storm. They're going to be hosting 3 other animators who will be animating live a very specific challenge that they do not know about yet in rapid succession. And that's going to be Jaleel Sadul, who's worked at DreamWorks and Weta and now runs Steamroller Studios. Jason Shum, who's been at Riot and Amazon, is in Blizzard. And then David Gibson, who is also at Blizzard. So stay tuned. Like, up next is probably the most bananas thing that we've got planned.
For sure.
Let's see what they come up with.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, and toss it to them.
Thank you.